This is That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, Part 2 of the Beginner's Guide to Anime and Manga. I'm your host, Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and I'm joined by... Actually, my co-hosts aren't here because this is being recorded while I'm editing. We went way too long recording the Beginner's Guide to Anime and Manga, so we had to split it into 2 episodes. If you haven't listened to Part 1 yet, I'd encourage you to do so. But who am I to tell you how to live your life? We'll now pick right back up where we left off with Kermit D. Grog, aka Andrew, and Bento Baggins, aka Ben, joining me in explaining some terms you might hear related to anime and manga, and then going through some movies and series we'd recommend to get you started. And don't forget to check out our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com, to find links to our social media, as well as other articles and reviews. So with no further introduction, let's get back to it. So, now we're going to talk about some important terms that you may have heard, but have no idea what they mean. And we're going to start off this section by talking about the subgenres of anime and manga.
We're going to say you've what? You got your traditional ones like comedy, horror, fantasy.
Yes.
Sports, sci-fi.
Traditional subgenres
hobbies
that are easy to convey to an English audience. But then you have specific subgenres that have their own names that you may have heard. And most of the time, these will translate fairly well into English words, but they still generally use the Japanese word because it holds that particular connotation.
Because it sounds cooler.
So,
It's exotic.
probably the first one that everybody's familiar with, shonen.
Yeah, we've been throwing that around a lot today.
Yeah, shonen. Okay, shonen means basically young man.
Young man.
Shonen is the word for young man. You would describe probably a junior high school to late teens boy as shonen. And it is basically comics geared towards that audience.
Yeah.
Which I would say by far the most popular is something called Shonen Battler.
Mm-hmm.
A Shonen Battler creates a universe where there is usually a power or some kind of system that the characters engage with, and they each develop their own styles, they grow in power, they progress, and they fight as they go. And the excitement usually comes from seeing the big fights play out. The art is a huge part of this. It needs to look cool. The big ones, I would say probably the most recognizable in my day was Dragon Ball Z. Probably the most recognizable today is One Piece or Naruto.
Demon
My
Slayer.
Hero.
You're already behind. Is My Hero Academia or Demon Slayer. If you went back a decade or two, you would probably say something like Naruto,
Bleach.
or Bleach.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the ones that tend to really go nuts.
Yeah.
Kind of the way that probably the most popular comics in America are superhero comics.
Yeah, that would be. I feel like that's a good comparison. Not that they are similar, but conceptually, their place in pop culture knowledge, popularity.
So
Shonen
following
Battlers akin to that.
So following from shonen, we have seinen. So seinen is basically just the older version of that to some degree.
Yeah, seinen is probably focusing on like a male in their early 20s. These tend to be more like hyper violent.
Yeah.
I would say. Probably the most recognizable seinen is Berserk. They're usually more mature in theme, more sex, more violence, darker usually. I'd say there's not a lot of like, I can't think of a comedy seinen off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I personally associate it with like darker themes, but I don't know if you guys have a different experience.
No, that's pretty much. Yeah, I think,
No,
I
it's
think
usually more of the few that I've come across. I would say that for the most part.
So then the flip side to both shonen and seinen is shoujo and josei, which are the girl versions.
Yeah. Shoujo means young woman, like Bishoujo Senshi Seira Moon. Shoujo is, junior high school girl. Usually they involve romance comics, but they can involve other things like mystery. Typically not as action heavy as shonen. Josei tends to be more like juicy romance, more soap opera-y.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, if you're interested in that, most recently we've been doing Heroin Addiction, which is almost exclusively what I would call josei. People die in josei, though. It ups the violence, it ups the sex.
Yeah.
Similarly, dark themes.
Another one that sort of goes along with shoujo, Ben, I see you have listed specifically here, is the magical girl genre, which is sort of a sub-genre.
Yeah, magical girl is something I have only ever seen in anime and Star versus the Forces of Evil and Steven Universe.
Correct. Those are definitely magical girl inspired Western cartoons.
Yeah, the magical girl typically involves literally that. A girl who does magic. It's usually like a pretty girl in a pretty outfit fighting with vaguely defined powers using the power of love. Usually
transformation sequence.
Yeah, transformation sequence, which in no way disguises them. It just transforms them into a different outfit. The biggest one is probably Sailor Moon that I can think of off the top of my head, but there's been others like Cardcaptor Sakura. I'm dating myself now. I don't know any recent ones.
I don't know. I don't. It feels like it's been. I don't know if it's just I'm not seeing them, but I feel like that genre is kind of. I think Madoka Magica happened, and they've been kind of taking a break for a while.
Yeah, that was kind of low. Yeah, that was kind of the subversion. Of
if you are into magical girl stuff, not the series for you.
No,
that it takes the magical girl trope and just goes, we're not gonna do this. We are going to throw this on its head. We're going to pile drive it into the ground. So lastly, as far as subgenres go, and most importantly, we have Isekai. So Isekai can encompass a lot of different things. But
it's probably worth an entire episode of its own to define
which we have done. So you can definitely... I've talked about that a lot. I am Isekai Sensei-Sama. It comes up basically every single episode we do. But just to give everybody the baseline, Isekai basically means another world, almost literally.
Literally.
I don't know if it was another world or other world but yeah.
I think it's another.
Close enough. And really what that is you are taking your main character for the most part, and there's lots of tangents in this, but for the most part, you're taking your main character out of modern day and you are putting them in another world, putting them into this scenario where they are out of place and they have to find their way or whatever that is. Most of the time when they get transferred, whether that is through, they died and get reincarnated in a different world, or if they're portaled to a different world, most of the time they are given some powers during that transition. And a lot of times those powers make them way more powerful than everybody else in that world. There's so many isekai that isekai can sort of cover the gamut of all of the different genres.
It is arguably...
It's the thing right now. It is coming out of our freaking ears. There is so much of it right now.
It has... I know we're not here to talk about books, but it has created two separate genres of fantasy novel in the West that are just mimicking these isekai stories. 100% originated in Japan. You've got lit RPGs. And
this RPG's lit, bro. Fam.
I wish. No, they are, and I shouldn't mock the genre. It's very popular. It's just not for me. But a lit RPG is literally an RPG. No, it is a literature RPG, meaning they keep the stats and everything. They describe the levels and the strength rating and all that junk.
Ugh.
And the progression fantasy
Hey.
is kind of like the Shonen Battler, but usually somebody winds up reincarnated as well.
So, I mean, it's basically my favorite thing, but I will agree with Kermit that it is not for everyone.
Nope.
So we touched a little bit on what manga actually means, but there's some related words that we need to cover. So whereas manga basically relates directly to comics, there is the Korean and the Chinese version of those, which are words you might hear from time to time, especially if you listen to our heroin addiction episodes. Because in those episodes, we cover Korean web comics, and they're not exclusively web comics a lot, but the word for that is manhwa.
Manhwa.
Now, the Chinese word for those comics is very, very similar. It's spelled almost exactly the same way, but they use a U instead of a W.
And I'd still say manhwa.
I think it's pronounced the same way.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just like, I don't know how I would say that.
Or it might be manhua instead of manhwa.
I guess it's like the way that the UA can make that hua sound.
Yeah. The only reason I put the 3 on the list is because of Barnes and Noble, literally. In Barnes and Noble, they have a manga section. And I have for a long time been asking the same question that a listener asked earlier is, what even is manga? Because a lot of these are not by Japanese people. They're by Korean people. Sometimes they're even by American people. And they just have the look, the vibe, the intangible je ne sais quoi of manga. But
They're in a book shaped like the other books.
you will
in the
see
section.
manhwa. And manhwa and it's
Yeah,
Chinese.
in fact,
Manhwa.
one of the series that we covered on heroin addiction, I was at Barnes & Noble, and I saw that they had it there,
Yep.
which is weird because manhwa is very much laid out for like cell phones.
Not all of it. I mean,
No.
like manhwa's been around for a long time. I bought King of Hell when I was 17.
But this series that we covered
Yeah.
was very much made and put out online first as a long strip for the cell phone. And I saw it in Barnes & Noble in a book form with panel layouts. So
People want to sell books.
I just wonder who redid the panel layout because that's a
Yeah.
big part of comicking. Did the artist do the panel layout
That's a
or did
good
some
question.
producer just
Who
come in?
knows? They tried to make a book out of Homestuck, which is an animated online thing. So
I flipped through it and it seemed like it wasn't done poorly. So whoever did it, I think they tried.
Yeah.
Related to all of those, word you might hear, tankobon.
yes,
I was going to say, do you want me to, I was interested to hear what your definition was.
a tankobon. Usually, I would say it's of the books we described of manga that you'll see at the bookstore. Each individual book volume is a tankobon. I don't actually know what it
Yeah.
means literally, but that is like
I think
in the way that like a Western comics have like you've got the single issue, and then if you have a collection of single issues, you have I think it's called a trade. At least that's what I would call it.
So a tankobon is roughly equivalent to a graphic novel trade paperback.
Yeah.
But a tankobon is a specific like length width kind of paperback in Japan. And I own a couple of Japanese ones, and you will notice there is a difference between the American version and the Japanese version.
I did not know that.
The Japanese version's a little smaller. It almost always comes with a jacket. They're actually like better made. But the tankobon is usually the collection. Basically what a tankobon is in manga terms is not an anthology. These things are almost always published either these days online in a web magazine or in an actual magazine in an anthology format, a couple chapters at a time alongside a bunch of other series.
Yeah.
The tankobon collects those, puts them in one place. They do have other words that I cannot remember off the top of my head for like omnibus type collections. But But
I don't know what those are either. Yeah,
And I will
those
say,
are newer, at
Yeah.
least to me.
as we're going through these words, these are just the words that have come up enough that I think that people that we're speaking to specifically here, beginners, will probably have heard in some way, but might not know what they are.
if you ever go deep into the weeds like me and you want to try to learn Japanese and you order some Japanese import comics, you will probably get a tankobon.
So the next thing I wanted to go over here is sort of important in terms of character relationships, and that would be the honorifics, which is something that we don't really have in Western culture.
We do. I mean, it's roughly equivalent to like Mr. and Miss, except in Japan,
For
you use it
everyone.
all the time for everyone.
Yeah, and it's much more in depth.
Yeah. In Japanese, it's so. First off, in manga, they didn't used to include the honorifics. They used to translate them out, which is probably the right call if you're translating.
In most cases,
Yeah, yeah.
But it complicates things because it's such a part of Japanese culture that there are times where somebody pointedly does or does not use an honorific to convey either an insult or a special meaning, and there's really no way to translate that.
Yeah.
So the honorifics that you probably need to know are san, kun, chan, sama for anime, sensei. What else did I put on there?
senpai and kohai.
Senpai and kohai. Okay. So san, kun, chan, sama are all suffixes. You put them after the name. So you could say ben-san, ben-kun, ben-chan. Now, san is typically used for adults, and it is or anyone you want to convey respect to. You could use it for your parents as well, who are adults, I hope. But san is gender neutral. You can use it for either. It can be Mr. or Miss. Kun, usually used with boys, usually young boys. You can use it for girls, but it conveys a kind of like masculinization, tomboyish, yeah, or like a girl that you're like buds with, you know. I think the kanji is literally the kanji for bud, like buddy.
Friendo.
Chan is used for girls or young boys. It's cuter. It's kind of feminine, kind of like diminutive. And sama is highly respectful, and it means lord, and it can be used. It's gender neutral. It could mean lord or lady. It can be used in anime a lot to convey, like, I guess what the kids would call a simp.
What?
If you
The main way you'll hear it is in like addressing royalty or potentially referencing deities.
It's like a my queen
you,
almost.
you could, so like the word for customer in Japanese is okyaku-san, or if you want to be really polite to the customer, okyaku-sama.
Right. And so the furthering of that is showing a normal person an immense amount of respect.
Yeah, if you were like a huge fanboy of somebody, you would either call them like, I don't know, Brad Sama or Brad Sensei if you look up to them in a way that you want to. Sensei, I think, as we all know, means teacher.
But it can also mean a couple other things. So a lot of times the artists are referred to as sensei.
But that's only if you're if you're somebody who would like to learn from them.
But also doctors can also be referred to as sensei. So generally, teaching highly respected, like
mentor.
It conveys like a mastery.
Yes.
Yeah. Like when you call somebody sensei, you're conveying on them like a rank almost.
And I think this would be the perfect time to explain, because I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast. Isekai Sensei-Sama is a joke.
Yes.
Because you would never, ever say Sensei-Sama.
Also, it's just supposed to be silly because when I do the full form, it's Professor Isekai Sensei-Sama, which essentially just doubles up the word professor once in English. So, like,
My
it's
Lord
supposed to be-
Teacher Isekai Sensei.
It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be a comical amount of
and
putting him over on a Reddit.
You'll find sometimes people will refer to me as Isekai Sensei, which would be the proper way to actually say it.
That's short form.
Yeah, it depends. Are you teaching or are you lording it over us?
I mean, most of the time, I'm teaching.
Most of the time he's lording.
But the thing you need to know about Japanese is if you talk to somebody, even if somebody you see every day, if you saw me every day and we were work colleagues or even close friends, you would probably call me Ben-kun or Ben-san if you're a weirdo. And if you called me Ben, that implies one of two things. Either we have a very intimate relationship, possibly romantic, or like you saved my life in Nam or something, like you know me so well. Or it could mean you don't respect me at all. It could be a way of like conveying a great insult. And that's the way a lot of insults work in Japanese, is they're just not polite or they're sarcastically polite.
Kisama is not on this list.
Kisama!
But that's a good example.
Kisama, koitsu, those are all ones that are taken to mean like asshole or bastard or something. And it's literally translated as just like this one or this person. Pronouns are also considered rude in Japanese. So you don't refer to somebody, if you know their name, you use it, and you use it with an honorific. So this is the etiquette that means a lot. They didn't use to translate these, like I said. It puts a burden on the reader to learn some of this stuff.
Yeah.
They used to put glossaries at the back of manga, but they don't do that anymore.
By and large, you don't, for official translations, you don't generally see them unless it's a very Japanese specific thing. But if you're a beginner, you shouldn't be reading those until you kind of seep into the pool more.
Yeah. But you probably will encounter.
But you will encounter them at some point.
Some of these you will encounter in our recommendations.
So I mean,
yeah,
something that probably the beginners are not really going to see, but it'll come up. And as far as what we talk about a lot on this podcast, it does come up. So important words there. These next ones, I'm going to lump these together because they sort of go together. Moe, chibi, kawaii.
What's the difference between moe and kawaii? Because I thought both of those were like cute, but they mean it in different ways. I mean, they're all kind of cute.
Moe is slang. Moe, I think the actual definition is a bud, like a flower bud.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it's so like the bloom of youth, that cuteness, that freshness. It's kind of creepy to me. To be
Yeah, Japan has a weird obsession with young people in a way that sometimes we are not fans of.
As a country that is running out of young people.
Yeah. So I think, to me, most often this refers to young women. Like I would, when I think of something being moe, I think I'm going to see a certain kind of cute girl be chased after. Not
I use
necessarily.
the term. There's the more increasing genre of cute girls doing things that if they have very generic designs, I will call moe blobs. I've heard used and I use.
Yeah.
Whereas kawaii is more sort of a general term for
Also,
cute.
kawaii feels like old now because I feel like I haven't run into kawaii non-ironically in a while.
Kawaii literally means cute.
Yeah.
And it can apply to babies, pets, toys, clothing, you know. I think I've heard it most recently unironically with Baby Metal and some of those other ones as kawaii metal.
Yeah.
And those are just cute metal. It's like a pop, bubblegum pop with heavy metal music underneath it was kawaii metal.
Yeah.
So they do say kawaii a lot in stuff, but they usually translate that as cute. Yeah. Kawaii doesn't usually stay untranslated.
Well, and a lot of these words, if you are, checking out the official translation, they will have been translated. But
sometimes they don't, depending on what you're doing. Like they're like a lot more. If you're looking at older stuff, almost assuredly it's translated. But some newer stuff are keeping some like words that we've just sort of osmosised,
right?
But on a more specifically manga and anime front, not just a general like language thing. It's like English in general has osmosis karaoke.
Yeah.
But anime scene has osmosis things like moe and kawaii.
I think
Moe.
most often I see the honorifics in manga. I don't see them so much in subtitles or hear them in dubs.
Yeah.
Correct. Unless it's like a really specific situation where they're
Yeah.
wanting to convey something.
Now, speaking of translating things, there's a couple words here, sort of a genre of words that are sort of difficult to translate because the thing that they mean is like a whole sentence.
Oh, is this your dere?
These are the dares.
Dere.
Ben didn't even know what the dares were.
No, I didn't. I consider them very nerdy.
This is very niche.
But it's somewhat niche, but it's especially the one word. It's something that comes up a lot.
It may
so I
answer
just
some
wanted
of
to
your-
touch on them quickly.
It may
Okay.
answer some of your
Yeah.
trope questions. These are all kinds of relationships.
Yeah,
So-
this is getting more inside baseball.
Dere
just for
itself, they use as the suffix for these words, and dere is a Japanese word meaning kind, lovable, or in love. So the sort of root of all of this is sort of a romantic relationship kind of thing. One person's love for another.
Yeah, it's like you're pursuing a particular type of person, from what I gather. And
So the primary one that you might hear is tsundere, and that is a person who is trying to act aloof
Or tough.
distant, and not show that they are in love with someone.
But they are.
But they are, and a lot of times that's played for comedy.
Yeah. Rocky exterior, gooey center. My favorite.
Another one, probably the second most popular one that I was surprised Ben had never heard, is yandere.
so I've heard of it, but only in the context of the true crime story, the Yandere killer, who stabbed her boyfriend on the stairs of a hotel.
And I mean, that sort of encapsulates the whole thing, which is an unstable and obsessive person.
Yeah.
So something like, I'm the only one who can have you. If I can't have you, then no one can. So
It's a very yandere.
This is a good time to mention that dating games are very popular in Japan.
Yes.
that is definitely inside baseball. So the last one I want to touch on, and there's like 12 of these, but this is the last one that I'm going to cover because it's the only other one that I've sort of heard out and about. And that's kudere.
I don't think I've heard that one before.
That would be a calm, cool, and collected person. So someone who would be in love with someone, but sort of like
The
not-
fawns.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, they got a
maybe.
lot of people. Maybe they don't
Tsundere,
like
but
you.
less rocky, more just like
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that person might be, totally open about their love, but not making a big deal out of it. So, yeah, just wanted to touch on those real quick because it's probably words that people may have heard, but those are sort of out there.
We're
so,
digging a little deeper in for those ones.
I went a long time without ever paying attention to any of them.
Yeah.
So a couple more I wanted to touch on. These are more sort of maybe insults. So to start off, otaku is probably a word that a lot of
Otaku is
people
an
have heard.
insult.
And that is sort of a translation to nerd.
Obsessive.
But it's a person who's obsessive about anime or manga or both or video games or whatever it is. They're like, they make their life about that.
So yeah, you can kind of connect it to whatever the topic is. Oh, they're an otaku for this. I know there are people in Japan who are like military or gun otaku, I've heard described, where this is the thing that they are obsessed with. So an otaku in just a general sense used here is usually somebody who's
Yeah, it's.
big into anime and manga.
I would say
obsessed with it.
I don't know if you put this on the list, and I don't know how offensive this word is these days, but like I'd say in America, otaku is kind of synonymous with weeb.
Yeah.
If Weeb isn't on the list, I need to talk about it.
Weeaboo came up, and I decided not to put that on there because
I
it's
think
sort of
we need to talk about it because we use it in the intro
It's
as best as we can.
it's
All
a
right.
derogatory term for people who like anime.
So-
It's I need a way to do it without referencing racial things, but it is basically a built derogatory word. Okay, weeaboo is the built derogatory term. I don't know where it came from besides that weird webcomic where somebody goes, somebody's a weeaboo, and then they go to paddle him or something.
Well, it
think
came
was it from
it's a
something else?
4chan
It's a
thing.
4chan thing.
So we
Okay.
don't really need to get into the history.
We don't need to get into that too much. Just, it showed up fairly recently in the grand scheme of things. I would say probably like less than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And it is sort of it's both derogatory, but it's one of those like own derogatory terms where like we sort of self-describe as the short form of weeb. So there's like, usually, at least I take that as the sort of like, we have a little shame in this, but also this is who we are. And I like it better than otaku because it's just sort of like, we are weebs, we are trash, this is what we're into, we've accepted that, but also, please don't look at us too hard.
I wouldn't call myself an otaku because
neither would
my love for anime and manga doesn't take over my life.
How many hundreds of these do you read?
It doesn't take over my life. But we call ourselves, in the same way that I call myself Isekai Sensei-Sama as a joke, we call what we do here the Weeb Cabal as a joke because it derives from weeaboo.
But I would call I've described myself as a weeb or people that I know as weebs, and it's like it's not. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like I guess it's a little tongue in cheek of like.
You're gonna hear it as you dive deeper into anime.
I think
that's
it will
the main
come up
thing.
as a descriptor. I don't think I hear otaku as much anymore, but I definitely hear weeb thrown around a lot as the short form of weeaboo.
If you wanted to be mean to someone,
Weeaboo does sound very derogatory when you say it completely, and I don't even know if we don't have time to get into history, but I don't think it's got any racial lines at the very least.
If you wanted to be mean to someone, you might call them baka.
You would. Baka means, hi everybody, welcome to one of the first words you learn when you're a teenager and you start watching anime. Baka means stupid or idiot. You'll hear them say it very clearly, so you pick up on it because you're a teenager.
It is one of the most easily gleaned from subtitles Japanese word.
Baka.
And it is one of the few direct insults in Japanese, specifically calling somebody a name. And I have seen in a lot of translation, like, tone matters in, like, how they translate it into English. Like, you might call somebody baka, like, slap them on the shoulder, be like, baka. Like, they drop something.
Dummy.
And you'll be like, dummy. And then you might have, like, Chainsaw Man going, baka. And it's dumbass.
Yeah. It all comes down to tone.
Yeah, it's... Again, Japanese, it's all about the amount of respect you're showing or not showing to the person.
Well, to finish off the insults, this one is a little bit more out there, but it's something that's come up before, so I just wanted to touch on it real quick, and that's chunibyo.
This was news to me.
What is that? I don't know this.
So this is something that you probably won't hear unless you get into sort of like school slice of life stuff, which is generally where you find this because it translates almost completely to second year syndrome, or sometimes they translate it to eighth grader syndrome. Basically what it means is...
So chugakse means middle schooler, so that's probably the chu.
Yeah. It describes a preteen or early teenager who has sort of like grandiose delusions. There's somebody who probably wants to stand out, or who's convinced themselves they have like hidden knowledge or powers.
They've
or
got
something.
protagonist syndrome as a teenager.
Yeah, basically. It's a sort of an imaginative thing that
I've never
really
heard of it.
sort
Sad
of
man destined for jail.
Only middle schoolers sort of really get into that and hopefully grow out of it.
It's only cute when you're a middle schooler.
I don't even know if it's cute.
Yeah.
It's only vaguely acceptable. It's only vaguely cute.
Yeah.
When you're a teenager and you don't know any better.
So I hope everybody picks some stuff up from that, and I hope that when you go back and listen to our other episodes, you won't be completely lost now. So we got two questions that are sort of related specifically to recommendations. First from Brianne, and second from Mary. So I'll read those real quick, and then we'll jump into these recommendations. Brianne says, am intrigued with what I see, characters on t-shirts, merch, memes, etc., but really just don't know where to start or where to access. Mary says, if I know nothing about anime and manga, which is true for me, where should I start? What is a good way to learn more? So the first one I wanted to talk about is not a manga at all, but I think is a good way to sort of bridge the gap between Western comics and manga. And that's a series called Bone. So this is a series that came out many years ago that I got really interested in as a child. And the reason I wanted to recommend it is because it very much looks like a manga, even though it's a Western comic. It reads this left to right like a Western comic. It's made in, it was written in English and everything, but the stylizing they do in there is very manga-like. And it's just a fun story. And I think it's a really, it's a light way to sort of read something that is manga-like before maybe you would dive into something a little bit more, Japanese-centric or something like that.
My recommendations were basically all movies. And my logic for that is, if you're not a comic book or cartoon fan, I think series sometimes take a while to get going, to get to the point.
That is a very good point.
I think a movie might be the best intro to show you the potential of the format to be taken seriously. Now, I realize as I'm looking at my recommendations, I don't have anything funny.
I've got one.
Okay.
I was thinking about it earlier.
Okay, I don't have anything funny or lighthearted. So
Okay, I've got that exactly.
So I'm going to say sci-fi, perhaps bordering on body horror, Akira.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic. It has a bike scene. I guarantee a motorcycle scene you have seen at least somewhere before. It is legendary. A lot of filmmakers take inspiration from Akira. It is a classic, and I think the first anime I ever owned.
It's also very strange, so taking it in will begin to let you know how up you are for anime bullshit. Because it's strange in a very provocative way. And you will either be like, wow, this is fascinating, I'm confused, or I'm wowed by this, or you might go, what the heck is going on? This is dumb. So
I actually
it's
would
only a
say,
movie, so it's a good opener.
Unless you are already into like Western sci-fi stuff, probably not a good place to start.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. This is sci-fi bordering on horror, rated R, nudity, violence, drugs.
Yeah.
If strange things that can sometimes make you feel uncomfortable is not up your alley, not a good place to start. But I would say somebody who saw Akira recently for the first time, even however many decades later, it is still a provocative, fascinating film to take in.
As a
both
movie,
as a anime and a film.
To sort of say like this is sort of the elevation of anime, like where it can go. It's a really good series for that.
Yeah.
It would probably be Oscar worthy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason, like Ben said, all the American filmmakers keep threatening us that they're going to make an Akira movie.
So the next one I'm going to say is Perfect Blue. This is a Satoshi Kon, that director I was talking about. It's about an idol, which is a Japanese concept, kind of like a pop star, who struggles with her stage identity. They have to be very fake all the time, very happy, very pure. And then the contrast between her being an actual human being and a stalker and a bunch of stuff. It's a psychological thriller where she eventually like loses her mind trying to maintain these dissonant personalities. And I'd say this is like in the vein of like a Memento or some kind of movie like that where you don't always know what's real and what's not. It's supposed to be disturbing. It's supposed to make you think. And again, I would say, your content warnings for sex violence. This is a rated R movie for adults. Skipping ahead a little bit to the more, again, sci-fi cyberpunk. I'm going to recommend Ghost in the Shell, the 1995 film If you're looking for it, Google that specifically, because there's a lot of Ghost in the Shell. But this is along the lines of like Blade Runner, Neuromancer, all of the great like cyberpunk stuff. Ghost in the Shell is right up there. I'd actually say it's like a mandatory movie if you're into cyberpunk.
And if you like the movie, you will love the show.
I think, Standalone Complex is the
Yeah.
one. Yeah, Standalone Complex is great. I haven't seen all of the other
Standalone
ones.
Complex does something really good that a lot of other anime doesn't, which Kermit touched on a little bit, which is the sort of each episode is its own thing.
Yeah, it's like a crime drama.
Yeah, there is connection between them, and especially later in because I think it's only one season.
Yeah.
Although I think
There's a
started
sequel.
But a lot of the beginning episodes sort of stand on their own. They stand alone. Complex.
Complexly.
But yeah, there's a lot of mystery involved and like intrigue, and it's crime drama thing, and it's just like really good. So if you're into that kind of thing, Ghost in the Shell, the TV show, again, is probably a good one. And the dub is excellent.
It is a dub that holds up.
Yeah.
I will agree. The next one is Your Name. This was a huge movie a while back.
God.
It's kind of a.
I never saw it. I avoided it. I don't like a lot more.
It's a drama.
Yeah.
Drama's putting it lightly.
It's depressing.
It's very depressing.
It's high drama. I'm not going to give a lot of details about it, but
Not my scene.
if you're into that more like serious, dramatic, the pain of life kind of movie.
Oh my gosh.
And then segueing off that, I got another one of those. This one was a Roger Ebert top 100.
Wow, really?
Yeah, this is Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh, oof.
Grave of the Fireflies is the single most depressing film I have ever seen.
Made by Studio Ghibli?
Yeah, made by Studio Ghibli.
Directed by man?
I don't.
Whose name escapes me?
Miyazaki?
Miyazaki?
I don't know.
I know they showed it with My Neighbor Totoro because it was too much to put on its own.
Yeah, Grave of the Fireflies is a movie. It is one of the best movies I have ever seen, and I have only ever seen it once, and I will never watch it again. It is up there. It is about these kids who are in World War II, and they wind up basically
Japanese children.
Yeah, basically on their own.
At the end of World War II.
Spoilers, Japan loses.
Spoilers!
So it doesn't go well. It's not as funny as I'm making it sound right now.
Yeah, that's where we're laughing because otherwise we would be crying and being very depressed.
And then I'm going to anger Andrew, but this is like the quintessential, like if you wanted to show your kids an anime, Spirited Away.
It's Spirited Away.
Yeah.
That's the one we watched. I watched in film class in college.
Spirited Away is sort of like the classic one, but a lot of the Studio Ghibli films are sort of...
They're good intros.
Yeah.
It involves a lot of... I don't know if it beats you over the head with that's what it is, but it involves a lot of Shinto imagery, which is a religion in Japan.
I don't...
It can feel very foreign, but because it's like a moving, you're not... It is a little bit of a wibbly wobbly,
and it should
about
be
what's
noted.
going on at any moment. So you're just kind of along for the ride,
Right,
and that can help you kind of get used to the pool that is anime.
Yeah, sort of the whole point of Spirited Away is that it is foreign because the little girl who's the main character gets sort of, it's an isekai, gets thrust into
Spirited Away.
This very strange place, which while it has a lot of sort of classical Japanese imagery, is very foreign to her.
It's an Alice in Wonderland kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Studio Ghibli films that are very good sort of introduction because they tend to not be super involved
and their visual language, just the style of things and how it kind of moves can help you.
My favorite is Princess Mononoke, but a lot of people seem to not like that.
Princess Mononoke is really good, but I don't think it's a good starter.
Yeah.
It's very involved, somewhat complicated, very heavy.
If you like Spirited Away, give it a try and let me know what you think.
Yeah.
I'm interested because I really like Princess Mononoke, but I've heard mixed.
I would actually say...
this is the intro stuff, and then as you figure out what you like and you don't like, or if you don't like it at all, you go from there to whatever's next.
Ponyo, I think.
Never saw it.
So Ponyo is very much a sort of like children's film. So there's not very much going on there that is like, oh, big, bad, scary stuff. But it's a lot of fun. It's very beautiful. And if you watch the dub, it's got lots of famous celebrities as the voices.
I feel like a lot of the
including Liam
Ghibli
Neeson.
films. Yeah, Tina Fey is also in it, which is very strange.
Right.
All the Ghibli ones get celebrities.
Yeah,
I don't like them.
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
So you sort of can't go wrong just going checking out Studio Ghibli stuff. It's probably a really good introduction.
Yeah.
I'd say it's.
I feel like we're all in agreement that a movie is the best way to get introduced because it's
probably
not asking you for more. Like, you have to watch this many episodes, or read these chapters. It's here is a unit of a thing. Have at it.
I think the movies introduce you to the potential for cartoons to tell emotionally complex, mature stories.
Yeah.
Which is not always what's shown in.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, how do you capture that? Because it's like, it's all anime, but there's that certain extra thing that a lot of shonen stuff that's popular is its own thing that the movies don't really capture what makes it, those series, like, different or special than, like, Western stuff.
But I do think if you have some comic book reading under your belt, or like you're a fan of animation already, you can jump straight to the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can dive in a little bit more because you understand that.
In that regard, I think the thing I want to recommend at the very top of the list, and you can pick the anime or the manga of this, but as far as like cream of the crop, best of the best, you're gonna read this and you're gonna forget that it's a manga, or you're gonna watch it and you're gonna forget that it's an anime. Spy Family.
I
forgot we were going to talk about that. Yes, Spy Family 100%.
We're not going to go super deep into it because we did recommend it in a previous episode. We went into a lot of detail on that one. We've talked about it a couple times after that. But Spy Family, and that is spelled Spy X Family.
They like putting X's and things.
The X is silent for whatever reason.
The X is a punctuation mark.
It's cross.
It's usually a dot. It goes in between two unrelated or two words that Japanese doesn't have spaces. So sometimes they put a dot between two words in a title. And in this case, it's stylized as an X. Yeah. It's not actually the letter X.
Oh, okay.
But Spy Family is it's set in a parallel Cold War East and West Berlin, Germany kind of thing. They call it Berlin. And it's partly a spy thriller, partly a wholesome family slice of life thing, and it's sort of it's primarily a comedy.
Yeah.
But it does so many different things, and it does them all really well.
And it does it in the way that is what makes, I feel like, manga and anime special, of that way that they sequentially tell the story of, like, now we're following this character, but it builds on that thing that we did a couple of chapters or episodes ago, and it just, the way that the story moves forward, while very, I feel like, approachable to people who've never really read a manga or watched an anime, it also kind of gives you a lot of that, again, that thing I talk about that makes it special when you're following these series and the way that they tell their stories and build on each other and move forward.
And I think to an extent, even the publisher knows that this is like a gateway series, because this is one where they do translate the honorifics. Mm-hmm. I've paid attention to that because she always calls the daughter Anya-san, which is a weird thing to call your own daughter. So in the English, they translate it to Miss Anya.
But it's super cute. It's super fun. It's funny. There's dramatic moments, but it's not too heavy.
At moments, that's really well done. It's consistently, I mean, at least for reading it. I mean, I've read and watched, and I love both of them, but like pretty much every chapter, if it's not one of the serious ones, I will have a big belly laugh at something, which is not something that always happens when I'm reading manga. Content
warning, there is some blood sometimes. There's a couple pages where there's a lot of blood, but that's not the primary point.
Yeah, by and large, this is generally for the most part, in all ages.
Yeah.
It's like a Bugs Bunny level of violence most of the time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely like top of the list. If you want to get into anime or manga sort of deeper than just like, oh, I'll check out a movie, that would be the series to start with.
Also, you will be in the zeitgeist because it's very recent. It's very popular. So you will be able to talk to people who watch anime.
Yeah.
If you so desire to do that for some reason.
We got 3 more series here, and these are sort of getting into more specific things with like action and drama and stuff. So these are a little heavier, but still pretty good gateways because for the most part, they don't rely on sort of like Japanese cultural knowledge. And I say that, but the first one I'm going to talk about is set in Japan, which is Chainsaw Man. The thing is it's a weird alternate Japan where
It's a weird alternate universe.
where
Earth.
demons, they call them devils, are prevalent. And so a lot of the traditional Japanese culture things sort of go right out the window.
Yeah, Chainsaw Man is just a really solid horror comedy.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of blood and guts. Not so much on the sex, which is fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine. There's a little bit of sex jokes, but I'd say it's definitely not for kids.
No.
No.
Chainsaw Man is not for children.
No, Spy Family you could read with your, 7, 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Chainsaw Man,
I would say teenage
16.
and up. Yeah.
Chainsaw Man is probably like another rated R.
Yeah. But it is a really good time. And if you go for the anime, it is so well done.
It's one of the. I'm a reader. I almost always recommend the manga. I'd recommend the anime of this and Spy Family.
Now, the manga of both of those is really good.
Also really good and available on the Shonen Jump app that we talked about.
And way farther along than the anime. So if you watch the anime and you're like, oh, this is so good, you could jump into the manga then.
There you go.
Cowboy Bebop.
Cowboy
Probably
Bebop.
one a lot of people have heard of.
That is the series that, of the people that I know who I would watch, like, Western cartoons with, that was always the one of, like, I don't get the sense that you'd be into anime, but I want to at least get you to try Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Be careful. Do not watch the live action version.
Do not watch
of
the
that.
live action version on Netflix. Do watch the dub of it.
Yes. Cowboy Bebop is another one where the dub is so good that it's almost better than the sub.
I'll put it this way: if you have no interest in the Japanese language at all, the dub is probably way better. There's a lot of like sarcasm and stuff that doesn't translate.
Yeah.
So it just in terms of reading subtitles, like it doesn't go the way you might think it would. So
There's something
the dub works.
to note. We should have covered this back when we were talking about it earlier, but a lot of the older anime, the dubs were made well after it originally aired in Japan.
Yeah.
And so they spent a lot more time on the dubs. And so a lot of the older dubs tend to be better than the ones coming out today, which are simul-dubbed to an extent.
Well, even outside of literal simul dubbing of like the episode comes out and within a week or two of it coming out in Japan that it is dubbed in the West, it is also, like you said, that the series is done. So it's not like they're not dubbing episode by episode as the story is still coming out, even if there's more time for each one to be dubbed. It's just Cowboy Bebop was done. We know the beginning, we know the end, and you can do that. Netflix does that, I think, for some of their dubs.
Yeah.
Because certain things, when they come to American and or Western Netflix, they will drop it in one thing already dubbed, and sometimes that means they come out later, but it means they can do a more better comprehensive translation and localization of it, which I always have high marks for, at least the ones that I've seen.
I agree and disagree. I've seen like there were a lot of companies back then that are now out of business.
Oh yeah, some of them are not good.
Didn't
and
do
older
a
dub
lot.
does not assure it, because also you get a lot of, again, you get more of that like Japanese culture erasure bits where things get changed, and it's like, his name's not, I can't think of a name to make this. It's Bob. His name's Bob.
She's
now.
not Kasumi. She's Misty. He's not Satoshi. He's Ash.
Yeah, actually, that's the perfect one. But also because we've grown up with it, that's just what their names are now. So it's complicated.
But Cowboy Bebop is a sort of space adventure kind of thing. Follows bounty hunters.
It's like a noir. It's a cross between like a noir, a western, and a cyberpunk.
Yeah, a space cowboy.
And it's one season, so it's pretty quick to get through and done.
What, 13 episodes?
26.
26?
Yeah.
I always forget how many
And a
episodes Cowboy Bebop has.
There's
26 and a movie that, unlike most anime movies, is very worth watching.
Yeah. But Cowboy Bebop is one of those ones where if you watch it, you will have something to talk about with someone else who likes anime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You should probably
Cowboy
avoid
Bebop.
those people, but anyway,
Cowboy Bebop is decades old at this point, but it is still like
it holds up
it
so well.
holds up, and it's a thing people still talk about and are aware of to this day. Hence them making that awful live action Netflix one.
You will like it for the soundtrack alone.
Yes, the intro alone is one of the most iconic, auditorily iconic ever made. Easy.
Juxtaposed to something that's coming out right now, which we're recommending, which is Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is interesting because it's set in pre-World War I Japan, Taisho era Japan, if you've ever heard that word. And
It's
like if we said Obama era America.
That's not that time period, just to be clear. This was not made in this was made. Was this written at all when Obama was president? This is not important.
No, it's way after that.
Okay.
But Demon Slayer follows Demon Slayers. Who would have guessed? It's a lot of really good action, but also the main character, Tanjiro, is like great.
He's the sweetest boy.
One of the most emotionally intelligent anime or shonen battle protagonists.
He's very, yes. I do want to say with this one, of everything that we have suggested at this point, Demon Slayer is your shonen battler. Of the ones that are popular right now, I personally believe it is the most approachable of the main ones that are
Right.
popular.
We may have recommended My Hero Academia a year or two ago
Yeah.
in that slot, but that series has sort of
I would say
fallen out of favor.
the thing about Demon Slayer
Becomes
that makes
something
it,
else. It's not. I don't think it's as approachable. Also, because there's a lot more of it now.
Yeah.
The thing about Demon Slayer that makes it a good intro is, though it is set in Japan, it is set in a time period that even modern Japanese kids would have questions about, so
Yeah.
they explain a lot of stuff. You're not going to be left with assumed knowledge very often.
And something important to note about that is we do not recommend the manga.
No, not unless you're real curious about what happens.
Yeah.
The anime is better in every way.
But again, that's coming out right now, so it's something you can check out. And it's just a really good time. Somewhat violent. Probably, I wouldn't say rated R, but probably like a PG-13.
It's really there was some stuff in the last fight that got real gnarly. So yeah, I would say not for children.
I'd say graphic depictions of violence. You got to know your limits.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, people get stabbed and they show it. People get limbs cut off.
The
and they
demons
show
get
it.
cut
Yeah.
up.
People
a
get
lot.
messed up in the show
Yeah,
sometimes. It goes harder than I would have expected from how it starts.
Yeah. And so we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but just wanted to cover again where you can find this stuff.
Oh, wait, can I do my recommendation first?
Oh, yeah.
Ben was talking about movies. I don't remember the exact subtitle on it. But the Loop on the Third movie, the CG one they made a couple of years ago,
yeah.
we all got to see that in theaters. Loop on the Third is a very long-running, I don't know exactly what to call it. I would say vaguely think Goofy 007, but it's literally the same guy and his crew, Loop on the Third. He does heists. He goes on wacky adventures. They're action-packed. They're funny. They're pulpy a little bit. And he's normally 2D animated. The movie they made was CG, and I think they captured his Loop on the Third is very old school. We're talking 70s era, but he's had reintroductions every couple of years for a long time. But I think that movie is a really good, pop this on in front of your family. It's funny. It gets the idea across.
Yeah, mostly
you meet
comedy.
the characters.
The only thing is there's going to be... I actually thought about putting this one on there. The only thing is there's characters you're not... It assumes you kind of know who they are.
Okay, because I guess I came into that, and it's been a while since we've seen it. So, I feel like you can kind of pick up if you've ever, again, maybe I'm talking from my place, growing up with, Hanna-Barbera characters, you, understand it's oh, you're this one and you're this one. You kind of get the sense of it.
It's like going into a Marvel movie these days without having watched all the Netflix shows.
I don't know if it's that bad.
You're not gonna get a big introduction. You're not gonna get that. Jigen is the Yakuza.
You'll probably be able to understand it, but you will be missing some context.
I think for what you need, because the adventures are never that complicated. It's a fun, pulpy adventure. I would say it's if you ever saw the Tintin movie or something. It's a fun pulpy adventure.
I think you'd enjoy it. I just, like, you're not going to get chills when Goemon stands on the car and you know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
No, but then you get to see it and you get to learn what Goemon does. So when you can, there are so many different, and that, like, this is a really good door for just this, because I had this with a different series. There are so many different Lupin the Third movies across decades of time and styles.
Yeah.
There's TV series that are different. There are, short films.
There's a Studio Ghibli one.
Yes, that one's fine. But like some are more serious, some are goofier, some are more like this or that. Like if you like Lupin the Third, there's a lot that then you can. That's
Lupin
like its own
is
bridge.
Luke Skywalker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the only ones where it's like
Lupin,
so many.
No, Lupin's 007. I said that.
Because there's there's like a Fujiko series, a Jigen series,
Yeah.
where they're like serious crime ones, and then Lupin like swaddles in it.
I agree. I think Lupin is a good introductory one.
He's a very old property that's constantly kind of revitalized in a good way, and I feel like it's a good like family friendly thing that you could sit down with whoever and go like, hey, here's a fun one. So I feel like we needed that
and if
to
you get,
even out a lot of the other more serious movies we talked about, which I think are still really good, but like I like that anime has that because it is a medium and not a genre. You can have all the different stuff and it is approachable from any direction.
And if you get really into Lupin, there's a Lupin Isekai manga. So
good for you.
Good for you. So before we wrap up here, just wanted to touch on where you can find this stuff again, because this came up in a lot of people's questions. So as we mentioned, Viz is going to be our biggest recommendation. As I said before, you can go on there and you can read a lot of stuff for free.
Without ads. There's not even ads.
Right. But you can also read everything by paying just a couple dollars a month. So that's our biggest recommendation. We've recommended Viz plenty of times before. We're recommending it again for beginners.
Especially now that there are the two apps.
Yeah.
The Shonen Jump app and the Viz app have the same account. They have different subscriptions, but they are built the same. Shonen Jump's got a lot more shonen action-y stuff. That's the kind of weekly magazine one.
Yeah.
The Viz app is new. I believe it is only available in America, not even Canada at this point. I could be wrong. Like literally within the past less than a month that has been out.
Yeah.
But it has so many series that I've never come across. The art styles all look different. Like having both of those is an incredible sampler plate. Like I said, you don't have to pay for either of them. The apps work great. They remember where you leave off and what you've read. 100% suggest getting those apps and checking, just starting again, slide through and see what name grabs your eye. And it's not going to take you long to knock out a first chapter, and then you can go, oh, I want to keep going, or that didn't speak to me, I'll try something else. So
the other way to check out manga, go to your local bookstore. I don't think you can go wrong with just perusing the manga section and just picking stuff up and checking it out right there without purchasing anything.
I can't speak to these two, but that's how I started. Literally was just learned about Toonami, and then I went to the bookstore and I learned about so many other series I'd never heard of before.
But you'll probably find something that you want to pick up, and as I mentioned before, they're not too expensive. So,
or just sit in the cafe and read them like I do.
There are ways to read manga online for free that are in a legal gray area. I am not going to explicitly say anything there, but I will just say that it's Mangatex. If you search for a specific series and they aren't on Viz, you'll probably find those websites.
Yeah. It's a little too high level for a beginner course.
Yeah.
But it's out there, I guess is what we're saying. The truth is out there.
So moving on to anime specific, as I said, Netflix. Almost everybody already has Netflix. They got a pretty big anime selection. I think they have a lot of the Studio Ghibli stuff on there.
They have Demon Slayer at the moment. I think I saw when I was going through.
Studio Ghibli.
Maybe.
They used to. I don't think they have it anymore. I don't think they're buds anymore.
So with Netflix, as opposed to other sites like Crunchyroll for streaming, Crunchyroll gets stuff basically as it comes out in Japan, whereas Netflix, they sort of wait and do like whole seasons at a time.
Yeah, they'll also get other series
week or two behind,
or their original ones. A lot of the major streaming platforms have a little anime section. I feel like Netflix is the one that people know the most about of those series, but I know like Amazon Prime have some, and probably whatever the heck HBO Max is called now, I think has a few. Max, I know, right? But for and there's some other like still popping around anime specific streaming sites, but the one you need getting into things is Crunchyroll is the place to look for them
Yeah.
if you're not looking at
And as I
Netflix.
said, Crunchyroll, you can watch stuff for free with ads. They also have a 14-day free trial. With the premium version, you get, higher quality streams. So I think it goes up to 1080 instead of 720.
Oh.
And then also you can just watch everything without ads, which is obviously pretty good. And Crunchyroll's not that expensive. I should have written it down, but I think it's only like $9 a month or something.
That sounds about right.
There's also another streaming service that gets stuff that Crunchyroll doesn't get, which is called High Dive. That's sort of a more niche one.
That one's definitely more niche and specialized. I was subbed to that recently to watch something and did not recognize pretty much anything on there. So I think it's a lot more niche because people aren't talking about this series because people don't have High Dive. Yeah. So,
but just to know that it's out there.
There's a couple other corners, but probably not a spot to look for people checking this stuff out for the first time.
So we just want to reiterate, it's very easy to find this stuff now. And as we said at the beginning, manga and anime, it's just comics and cartoons.
Yeah,
so
somewhere else.
Check it out, you're not going to be sorry you did.
Yeah. Dip your toe. What's the harm?
Well, thanks for listening to That Time I Got Reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoy recording. To find all our social media links, such as Twitter, Patreon, Facebook, and more, visit our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can also find articles on various topics, as well as new manga reviews. We'd love to hear from you on any of those social platforms, or you can leave a comment on the website. You can even just send us an email to isekai-sensei-sama@gmail.com. We're always looking for feedback on what you'd like to see and hear from us, or better ways to interact with you. If you prefer to listen to our podcast in high-quality stereo, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, where we simul-release all our episodes. Before we go, we want to remind you to check out Sugoi Mart, where you can get 15% off your first order by using the link in the description, or using the code APR15 at checkout. And if you'd like to hear some more from Ben, you should check out his podcast, Words About Books. What are you talking about recently?
It's a good question. One of Us is Lying.
Good question.
It's a YA mystery novel. They were
the
all
series
lying.
is called One of Us is Lying.
Yeah, they were all lying. We also talked about Spy Family, if you're curious. We talked about it as literature.
Wow.
Yeah. That actually might be a better episode for people to go in depth on Spy Family, rather than our episode that we did, but you should listen to both of them.
I talked about it with my co-host, who is a civilian, so he's coming from where you're coming from.
Well, once again, thanks for listening, and I hope we've opened up a whole new world of anime and manga for you.
We're not going to define Nakama as
you
a
guys
joke
were
for us and no one else.
It means comrade or ally. And apparently there is a meme that made it a legend.
So
What was the meme to us, that one video? I thought you were just going to verbatim say that text that appears on screen in that video.
I could have, but I decided not to.
Yeah, you were smart not to.
I skipped it because you guys were like,
You're right. You're correct, but it was funny to me because we talk about, again, I think about that short on a monthly basis.
I would say Nakama can translate most of the time when it's used in manga and anime as almost family.
Brother or comrade. I still like
that. Would be incorrect.
This can go at the end of the podcast.
I don't think it's good.
They say Nakama like 6 times an episode in Demon Slayer.
Are my Nakama.
And he is not talking to Nezuko.
All according to Keikaki.
I think it's got a stronger connotation than comrade.
It's not like, it's like brother. That's why in the Pro ZD video there's a giant thing that comes on screen with the asterisk that it's like because they describe it in the frame of crew, which I know it's a joke, but yeah, it's like that. It's like brother in arms, brother
in arms. I could see ally,
Hulk Hogan, brother.
They refer to the other Demon Slayers as Nakama.
Yeah, Brotherhood.
If every soldier in your unit is your Nakama,
Full Metal Alchemist
yeah.
Nakama? I'm fucking pushing that for SummerSlam.
but like your actual brothers are Kyodai. Or, you know.
I'm so proud of myself for Full Metal
Your
Alchemist
sisters are
Nakama.
Shumai. Not Shumai, Shimai.
Well, I don't care about technical definitions.
Let's just watch it or read it.
Ore. Don't give a fuck.
Ore!
Watashi wa fuck you.
I am fuck you.
Masaka Bakana! A whole new world.
An isekai. Okay.
I wouldn't get on a carpet with that person.
Free me!